Everyone, to today's Tax Talk. I'm your host. I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. We've talked a lot about audits over the last couple of weeks. So now we're going to talk about, well, what do you do after an audit? Because that often plays an important part. So let's start the show. Okay, so welcome to the show. I appreciate you taking the time to come talk to us, to come see us. And again, we've been talking a lot about audits here on today's Tax Talk. What to expect with an audit. Now we're going to talk about after the audit, because after you fought the audit, or maybe you didn't fight the audit, then what do you do next? So there's a number of things you can do next. I wanted to share this with you. The IRS has a simple guide, to kind of show you how a tax case can kind of go, and so it's pretty simple. It's a simple guide. Here's that. We'll talk about this in just a minute because I'm going to walk you through it. But here's the map. This is called the taxpayer map about how to solve these problems. Pretty simple, right? Kind of, it's amazing, what's involved. But there's, so you have some options. There's sometimes even after the audit, you can appeal it to an appeals, ask them to reconsider the audit. And that makes sense if you're unhappy with the outcome. Often, during the audit also, you can have some influence on the auditor and where they come out on their report. Although most people don't try to get involved with that. Now, as an attorney, when I get involved, we do work with the auditors and try to influence the way that they're going to decide something. But most taxpayers, they don't. They just kind of let the auditor do their work, and then leave it to them. And a lot of times, sometimes the auditor is kind of standoffish. Sometimes they're very nice, and it seems like they're going to help you. And I've had a lot of people tell me, I was working with the auditor. She was there, every day. I went to see her at her office sometimes. So it depends. They do have paper audits where you're never going to meet the person. They're just going to look at the documents and they're going to make a decision based on the documents. But sometimes they do come by your house, or sometimes their office if you're in business, and they'll come by and they'll review your documents while you're there. Sometimes they ask you to come into their office, and then you're supposed to bring the documents to their office, and you sit there while they do their job. Auditing is a very difficult, time-consuming matter. Not something you want to sit in their office while they're doing this. Very uncomfortable, I think. Also, not something that I would want them in my home. Usually, if you hire me, or some other professional, I'm going to ask the IRS to come to my office and work in my office, and that way it's a little bit of controlled. You don't have to go with them. You don't have to sit with them. You never even have to meet the auditor. And that makes a lot of sense most of the time because you are emotional about it, right? It's your money they're trying to take. Now, again, a lot of times you think that they're going to be nice to you because the auditor is nice. And you can have a nice auditor and still have a bad decision. Happens all the time. And as I mentioned, I think in some of the earlier videos, that you don't have to, sometimes it doesn't make sense to hire someone to represent you because the numbers aren't that large, or at least you don't think they're going to be that large. And so by the time I hire a lawyer and then I have to pay them for whatever they're going to find, maybe it doesn't make sense to hire a lawyer, but maybe it does. Right. So again, a lot of times even some big dollar audits have come out that people come to see me. A lot of times it's 3 years. The typical audits is 3 years because the statute of limitations on how long the IRS can go back and audit you is 3 years. Sometimes they can go back further if they allege fraud. They can go back further. There's some other reasons why they might be able to go back further, but generally it's a 3-year statute. generally when they audit you, they're going to audit 3 years. So if they're going to find any errors, and they usually do. Now, I have had people who went through an audit and found that they didn't owe any more money, that everything was perfectly fine. But many times it's not perfectly fine, that the numbers come out different. Sometimes one of the red flags is you do your own tax returns, right? And so they're auditing people who do their own tax returns, maybe don't understand it as well as they should and make mistakes. And then the IRS auditor, finds those mistakes. Now, I've been on cases where the IRS auditor found mistakes that I didn't believe were mistakes, and we've brought that to appeal. So what happens is, and actually they didn't appeal that case. What we wound up doing is going to tax court, and what happens after an audit is you get a notice of deficiency. Now, there's a couple of different steps, but one of the things that can happen is a notice of deficiency. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit today, is what is a notice of deficiency and, how to go about, talk about that. Now, I have a notice of deficiency up here. Rest assured, that's not my client up there. I don't know who that person is. I found this on the internet, and I'm using it as an example. I think it's fake, but I don't know. This is on the internet for anybody to find. But it's an example of a notice of deficiency. And then it's form 1221. I don't recall the form right off the top of my head, but they have a form that's on there. And then what happens with this is just the front cover of the letter, notice of deficiency. And then the audit, they go through every line. First there'll be, here's how much. First there'll be a page, and it just will explain all the changes that they made, and often it's a long list. They use the alphabet A, B, C, D, and then oftentimes it goes to A, B, B, C, and sometimes it goes to A. That's how many times that they found, how many changes that they made, and then they're all listed there, what they found, the difference. And then they go through each and every one of those lines and explain what they found and why they changed it, right? And so this is where you get your material or ammunition to file an appeal or a tax court case. And so, but let's go through this. I want to go through this map with you because it's explanatory, but it's also revealing in the sense that that it's so this is the best that they can do, and how easy it is to work your way through the IRS. So here it's the tax return preparation on the top left-hand corner, and then tax return processing. And then there's the exam. That's what the IRS calls an audit. They call it an exam. And then there's the different steps in the exam. And then sometimes it goes right to the collections, but oftentimes it goes down here to appeal. And then from the appeal, and you'll see all the steps in the appeal. And then from there to litigation. This is the bottom right-hand corner, this litigation. And this is what tax court is. Now there's a number of different petitions that you can file for tax court. There's a kind of a simplified version that's for $50,000 or less for any tax year. And then there's the regular version, they call it, and that's for over $50,000 in any one of the tax years in the deficiency, the changes. And so you file a tax court case, and once you petition them. Now, what happens in these types of cases, and we handle a lot of these cases. A lot of my cases are here in collections, right? So that we help people because they're in the collection agency. A lot of times you don't go through an audit. You file your tax return, right? And here you get it prepared. You file your tax return, and then it goes to collections because you didn't pay. And so that's vast majority of my work is done in the collections department. But we do help people with audits. So even before goes the exams, we help people with exams. Again, sometimes it makes sense to hire an attorney. Sometimes it doesn't. And then we go back down to the appeals. I like the appeals process. It is separate than the collections or separate than the examination. It's a different matter. So when I file a tax court case, they can't talk to those people that did the exam without you there, right? That's what they call ex parte communication. They're not supposed to talk to anybody in the IRS that has anything to do with your case with you if you're not there with them. Okay, that's just like any other court case, right? You have to have the parties together. For instance, I can't go talk to a judge about a case unless the other side's there. Right. And that makes sense because you don't want any shenanigans happening. And everybody's suspicious of the IRS. But while they're all in the IRS, they are different departments and they don't know each other. And much of much of this is done somewhere else outside the state of Illinois. Some is done here. The revenue officers, for instance, are here. They have some in downtown Chicago, some in Downers Grove. There's one out on River Road out there by Rosemont. I think it's Schiller Park. But that's where the offices are, and revenue officers are there. Some of the auditors are there also, and that's where sometimes people will go to meet with the auditors to have their returns audited. Again, not a fun thing to do. I wanted to also show you this notice of deficiency. So the notice of deficiency, again, this is a very important notice. And what's going on here is it lists here. Let me blow this up here because it lists. This is very important. On this one it's dated. The letter is dated May 13th, 2013, right? But the last date of file is listed here, and that is August 11th, 2013. So 90 days. Oftentimes we refer to this notice of deficiency as a 90-day letter, and it tells you where you're going to go to court, what tax court you should apply in. And so here's where it is in the letter. And then it tells you some things about the simplified version, as I mentioned, or the regular version, and which way to go. And they have what they call a petition kit. And you can go to the ustaxcourts.gov. Is it tax courts or tax court? I think it's ustaxcourt.gov, and they have all the forms there, and you can fill them out yourself. So you don't need a lawyer to go to go to tax court. Like every other matter, if you want to go to civil court, they have small claims court, and many times people don't hire a lawyer, and many times you don't need one because it's kind of a simplified version. What happens with these kinds of deficiency notice of deficiency cases is that it usually goes to an appeal officer first before it goes to the lawyers. And it's the general counsel's office, the IRS general counsel's office. They send this case to an appeal officer, and that appeals officer reviews it. Generally an accountant, right, who understands, a lot of the tax, the attorneys also understand it too, but they're not tax preparers. So they don't, they're not as well versed as some in the appeals office. And the appeals office, the appeals officers are in this, once you get to that level, are very, they're very informed. They understand the tax code very well. Now, again, so do auditors, but I think sometimes auditors don't understand the code or the law as much as they should. And so sometimes they make determinations that are just wrong, and you can't talk them out of it. They just believe that they're right. And I've had cases where it goes to an appeals officer, and it's pretty cut and dry that once we get to an appeal, it's like, oh, this was wrong. This is the way it should go. And then we win the case. And by winning the case, they just reduce or eliminate that charge. And a lot of times there's a number of them. Sometimes you'll win some, you'll lose some. They'll say, well, this deduction was wrong, but this one wasn't. Usually it's the big ones that you're after, right? If they change your taxes, $1,000, and I'm already paying, $15,000. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't want to pay the extra $1,000, but that's not reason enough to hire an attorney, right? When you get to some that are in the hundreds of thousands, and we have cases that are in the hundreds of thousands, this is where you're going to have a problem. This is where it makes a big difference on what the auditor decides. In my opinion, the auditor is generally against people who make a lot of money. They just are. Okay. They look at people as cheaters. Whether you're a cheater or not, that's what they look. That's because of think about where they're coming from, right? And what they see. So that's what they see a lot. They see a lot of cheating. And so they just assume everybody's a cheater, even though everybody's not a cheater, right? And you're not a cheater. And maybe you made a mistake. Maybe you didn't. Maybe they made a mistake. And maybe you can change that by going to tax court. So we go to tax court for people. We fight the IRS that way. If at the end of the tax court, if you still owe the IRS money, now it's going to go back to here. I should go back to this because now it's going to go back to the it's going to go back to I'm going to go back to this. Now it's going to go back to collections, right? So over here. So they're going to go back to collections. And if it goes back to collections, now you're going to work with collections. Now it takes a long time to get back there. As I said, it goes to an audit. It hasn't been assessed against you yet, right? So they haven't collected against you once they audit you, because then you have when you have that opportunity to appeal. And then once you appeal, then you get this, now you get the 90-day letter. If you wait the 90 days and then you file on the 90th day or very close to the 90th day, now that's been 3 months. Now it's going to go to court. Now that's going to take some time also. That's going to take, with COVID, I've had cases that are over a year old now, haven't really moved because the IRS hasn't been processing things as fast as they used to. So these are, I think this map is very informative, both in the sense that it tells you how it works, but also reveals how complicated it is, and maybe sometimes why you don't want to get into this yourself, right? Because it could be it could be difficult, right? So the IRS is again very difficult sometimes this whole process, and it has to be complicated, I guess. But they tried to come up with this map to show you how easy it is, but it's really not easy, is it? And so that's why sometimes you need someone to help you. And of course, that's what we do. We help people fight the IRS. And if you need help fighting the IRS, then you should contact us. Now, before I go though, I want you to like, subscribe, and share this video. If you found it interesting, if you found it informative, like, subscribe, or share, or all three if you can. If you share it with your friends, that's the best thing that you can do for us. If you know someone that's having some tax problems, maybe you should share this video with them, and we'd be happy to talk to them about how we can help them. And maybe what you should do is you could tell them that I have this book. It's the IRS. It's the IRS Deal with Your IRS Problem Today is our book, and the book is free. So if you go to freeirsbook.com, again, it's freeirsbook.com, you can get a copy of my book, and I'll be happy to send it to you, again, for free. So if you have questions, do that right away. So thanks so much for listening here today. We look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. So let me pull up I got to pull up my media. There it is. Okay. So, but anyway, this is my media had disappeared. So, but thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.